I'm Catherine Arndt, the Chief of the VLGA Connect studio. Welcome to today's episode, brought to you by the VLGA, your councillor support network and the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Well, hello there, strangers. Nice to see you. We're back with TGU from VLGA Connect. My name, if you've forgotten, is Chris Eddy, and I want to introduce you to our panel this week. You might not remember them either. Tony Rownick is here from Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. Hello, Tony. What have you been up to?
Oh, Chris, it's been really interesting period of time watching the local government elections, getting lots of phone calls about, am I being defamed in some other candidate's material? Please help me, Tony. I've tried to nominate and I'm finding I'm not on the voters roll, that sort of stuff.
Well, not much you can do about that, is there?
Not much at all, unfortunately, could do about that. But yeah, watching really with interest and excitement as we go through this process that we do in a democracy regularly and every 4 years here in a local government level.
So a lot to talk about with the election campaign, which we'll come to shortly. But I want to introduce the other member of our panel. The jet-setting Julie Reid is back from overseas. And I see, Julie, you've arrived back with a new title, the CEO of LGX. What does this mean?
I have, Chris. I'm so excited to announce that I've set up a new company, LGX, which is Local Government Experts, and I've now got 19 associates that I'm working with, Chris. I'm so excited.
Wow.
And these are all experts that come from local government. So we are local government people that are here to assist other local government people and also to help out state government and federal government and other agencies that want to work with local government more effectively. So we're hoping to particularly work with executives and help them navigate through those complex and challenging landscapes that they face every day and help them get results. So I'm so excited, Chris. But just coming back off the trip to New York, to Toronto and to LA. Again, I've been out there looking at really great examples of what's been happening overseas and how we can learn from some of the great work that's happening from councils all over the world. So I've been very inspired, Chris.
Excellent. All right. I'm sure we'll hear some of those inspirational thoughts over time, and we'll send you the bill from the VLGA for that free plug for LGX, if you don't mind. But no, seriously, good luck with that enterprise. I'm back from Japan and the Philippines and Taiwan and Hong Kong and Papua New Guinea. Had a lovely time, not looking at anything local government related. It was all purely relaxation, I'm happy to say, except I picked up this bug on the way.
I know, and you're sounding a bit husky, Chris.
Yeah, more than a bit.
Sure that it's the real Chris Eddy and it's not an imposter?
It's an AI version. Yeah, and they haven't quite got the model right with the voice. Yeah. No, seriously, we're soldiering on. But and when I say seriously, I do mean that about this first item that we want to talk about. This dropped with a bit of surprise this week, a report from IBAC on what it called Operation Leo. This is the report on its investigation into allegations of bribery and misconduct involving some councillors at Moonee Valley City Council. Tony, this only came out yesterday or Wednesday. Not sure if you've had a chance to read it properly, but it's a pretty heavy and sobering read.
Absolutely, Chris. And I think you know what you said there in the introduction in terms of the timing, really interesting because being released in the middle of an election campaign period when a number of in fact, 2 of the 3 councillors who are adversely named in the report are candidates for re-election. I wonder whether that was a deliberate decision by IBAC and the CEO there, Victoria Elliott, thinking that, voters should be aware of the findings of IBAC in relation to these councillors before they have the opportunity to vote. But as you say, IBAC was examining these allegations of bribery and misconduct at Moonee Valley City Council, whether certain councillors had used their positions as elected officials to seek or obtain preferential treatment for a club, the Essendon Royals Soccer Club, and whether those councillors sought to obtain a financial benefit or some other inducements in return for favourable voting in issues involving the club. And in fact, adverse findings against 3 councillors, former councillor and former mayor Cam Nation, and some current councillors seeking re-election, Jacob Beatio and Councillor Narelle Sharp, that they had used their positions to influence Moonee Valley City Council decisions in favour of the club, at the expense of other local sporting clubs and the wider community. And these 3 councillors had voted on various Moonee Valley City Council motions where the club had an interest, despite these councillors having received undeclared hospitality and gifts from the club. So in summary, the findings were failures to declare conflicts of interest, failures to declare gifts and hospitality, and a failure to report suspected corrupt conduct. And what, of course, has perhaps dominated the news on this is the more salacious sort of elements of the story, and certainly reprehensible conduct, but findings that, a particular set of findings around former councillor Cam Nation, that he'd sought and obtained, amongst other things, cocaine as a bribe or an inducement to advance the interests of the club. And there was also various text messages that included evidence that former councillor Nation had, spoke in the text messages about the need to avoid a paper trail, which is suggestive of a clear intent to do something, surreptitious that the council knew was not appropriate. And I think the findings kind of expose some of the perhaps fiction in the expressed reasons for councillor Nation, can I dare say, for his sudden resignation online at the end of a council meeting in March. He expressed, views around poor pay, you'll remember, and limited work opportunities that we spoke about. But one would have to, speculate at least that he would have been mindful of the likelihood of these adverse findings coming out in the near course.
We have to assume that he was certainly aware of all of this at the time, and that it was likely a factor in his thinking at the time to give it away.
Yeah.
Tony, one of the things, as I say, it's a pretty heavy read. We're not going to regurgitate it all here. It's there on the IBAC website if people want to read it. But what I'm unclear about is, what, if anything, comes next with regard to these findings that IBAC has made in its report?
Well, interesting you say that, because we'd reflect, say, on Operation Sandon report and the outcomes of that report. And while there have been clearly reform outcomes, quite a set of recommendations with Operation Sandon, I think something in the order of 36 or so, and many of them having been implemented, and we're well aware of that. But in terms of consequences for individual councillors, I'm not aware of any successful prosecution or even a mounted prosecution in relation to
There's no reference to any referrals, for example, is there?
Yeah,
unless I've missed it.
No, and that's not apparent in the Operation Leo report. There is certainly a recommendation that the model councillor code of conduct that we know is coming in, that ought to be explicit in requiring councillors to report suspected corrupt conduct. One of the findings of IBAC here was that councillors Sharp and BTO had both failed to report their awareness of an alleged payment arrangement between the club and councillors that was, apparently allegedly being set up, an intended bribe, if you like. And that the evidence was that they were aware of these attempts, and that they chose not to report their suspicion of corrupt conduct to the authorities. And IBAC have recommended that the Minister for Local Government express in that model code that clear expectation that councillors need to report a suspicion of corrupt conduct. As we know, CEOs have an obligation, and indeed councillors do have an obligation to report these things, and there was that failure there. I'd also just say, look, there are councillors here who are running for re-election, who are making statements about, the report clears us of, bribery and corruption. Yes, perhaps the findings in relation to some of the councillors were that they haven't explicitly said that there was bribery and corruption by those councillors, but certainly, for example, Councillor Sharp, who's come out and made a statement that, she's been cleared of bribery and corruption by the report. There are numerous adverse findings against her in relation to, not declaring gifts is one. Councillors, it's worth a good read of this report, because one of the things that IBAC say is that it wasn't sufficient for councillors to say, I didn't declare that hospitality or that gift because it didn't reach the $50 threshold under the council policy for declarations. The IBAC said that also the value of the gift and hospitality wasn't the only consideration for councillors in deciding whether a conflict of interest would arise. Councillors also had a duty to consider if the gift was designed to influence their decisions. So even a gift that didn't reach the threshold for declarations, if it was designed to influence them, it was an attempt to corrupt them, and was also based on the IBAC finding, was something that ought to have triggered a declaration of a conflict of interest. There was also findings that, Councillor Sharp had failed to report a conflict of interest in relation to a personal relationship that she had with the club president. And similarly, negative findings against Councillor BTO, who's come out and said, it was an error of judgment for him to fail to accept the complimentary membership of the club that he received, and then to go on and vote in relation to matters that the club had an interest in. So I think it's a salutary reminder to councillors about the need to consider, why are they being taken out to dinner? Is this an attempt to induce them? Why are they being offered gifts, even of a relatively minimal value, like a $250 club membership? Because the IBAC certainly took the view that these were attempts to corrupt. Indeed, that they did corrupt, in that the councillors did make attempts to favour the club in their decision making, and certainly failed to declare a conflict of interest.
But thanks for that analysis, Tony. One of the disappointing things, there's a lot of disappointing things about this, but one is, as you say, the media's focused on the headlines with the words cocaine and former mayor. In my perusing of all the different news sites that I look at, this is the most picked up story relating to local government around the country. Every newspaper pretty much in the country is running that story, which, it's good that it's been exposed. It's not great about the way it paints local government. Particularly.
No, that's what I'm worried about, Chris. I'm worried about the reputation of local government through this kind of report. I'm worried about the reputation of Moonee Valley. There's some great people that work at Moonee Valley. I suspect that the staff are going through a fair amount of stress associated with this kind of information that's been released now. We send our thoughts and wishes to the staff and hope that, that they can get through this fairly difficult time of, taking a hit based on the behaviours of a few of the councillors. So it is a reputational issue for local government, reputational for Moonee Valley, but they will no doubt just get on with the job, and they'll continue delivering services, and they'll continue to have hope for what has been learned from this particular scenario. And no doubt the state government are looking at what they can include in the work that they're doing based on the outcomes of this, and no doubt they would have had a bit of a heads up on this report. So hopefully they're factoring in some of the learnings from this, and hopefully councils will be looking at their induction program and using this potentially as a bit of a learning tool as well. So as well as Operation Sandon.
And Julie, you raised something I think that's really important that we should indicate, and is in that is that these various attempts to influence decisions of Moonee Valley Council, at times the council did act upon requests to do things. However, the IBAC commissioner in the report was very clear to say that the council officers in question, when they had, for example, potentially, I think there was a scenario where there was a request to change a parking sign outside a business,
there was.
and ultimately that was moved, but the officers had acted appropriately. They'd done their own analysis. They weren't being, swayed by some inappropriate relationship. But and that certainly there are no findings of any. Not only are there no findings of any inappropriate behaviour by officers in this instance, there is in fact explicit language in the report, and as we're talking, I'm flipping through it to try and find that language, but saying that the officers in question acted appropriately at all times.
That is worth
with that part is certainly heartening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So to draw a line under this, I understand David Wolf from IBAC is booked to come on VLGA Connect very soon with myself and with Catherine to talk about the recent perceptions of corruption in local government report. And no doubt Operation Leo will feed into that conversation as well. So look out for that very soon. I thought we were just going to be having a chat this week about election preparations, the things that are happening out on the campaign trail, and then that dropped, which has obviously become the major story of the week. So head to the IBAC website if you'd like to read that report. So let's talk a bit about elections. Nominations obviously closed a little while back. A record number of nominations, at least for this century, I understand, over 2,200 candidates. That's the highest since council amalgamations, we're told, according to analysis from the VLGA and Gender Lens Australia. The target of 1,000 women wasn't achieved in the candidate list. There's 876, Julie.
So disappointed, Chris, because it's 876. It's not bad. It's roughly 40%, but it's similar to the 2020 proportion. So I was a little bit disappointed. There's been a lot of work that's been going on in the background to try and encourage women to stand. So a little bit disappointing, but I suppose 40%, that's good, but we need to still improve on that. And so we'll no doubt be looking to the next election to try and increase that number.
70% of existing councillors have nominated for re-election. The flip side of that is 30% haven't, and there's some long-standing councillors we'll get to in just a moment who've chosen not to stand up again. But there's also been some unopposed elections. So we know the results, I think, of 47 elections because there was only the one or the right number of candidates in those wards. That's disappointing. Wouldn't you agree, Tony?
Yeah, look, it is. It's always, I think, even those councillors who are re-elected unopposed, I've often heard them say, I'd like to see interest. I'd like to see someone putting their hand up to run against me because it shows, that there's people are taking some interest. And I guess the stellar example of that would be Yarri Shire, where all the councillors have been elected unopposed. I'm actually doing some induction training at Yarri in November, and so I'll have an entire cohort of experienced councillors. So there's some advantages there, but yes, they haven't been sort of put to the test democratically, if you like. Although I guess they would say the community is obviously happy.
That's interesting,
let's
isn't
not
it?
forget they're costly to run these elections. So a small shire like Yarri will no doubt save some money by not having to actually go to the polls.
And it's interesting because that doesn't happen very often. I don't recall the last time when a whole council has come back unopposed.
I've never heard of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that is incredible. And like you said, could be beneficial to the community there. Let's hope the councillors there come back with a fresh set of eyes, with new advice from Tony, new advice from the leadership team there, to refresh for another 4 years. Yeah, great opportunity.
Keep an eye on the VLGA social media challenges for channels, I should say, for ongoing analysis in relation to candidates and all of those factors that we've been talking about. 16 candidates who had nominated have been removed, or mostly removed. I think some might still appear on ballot packs, which is going to create a bit of an issue, but they've been deemed ineligible, Tony, because they didn't complete the training that was required.
Correct, the mandatory training, and I can stand to be corrected on this, but I understand that they would have ticked a box that said, I have done this training when they nominated, and there's been, thankfully, there's been some sort of audit being done or some checking being done by Department of Government Services and Local Government Victoria that's identified these candidates, and they've been, forcibly, if I can use that word, they've been required to be retired from the election as a result. So look, I think we're glad to hear that there's some checking in that process, and that's a good thing, and so it would appear that all the candidates standing for election now have done the mandatory training.
Yes. All right.
It
So
sends a very, very strong message, doesn't it? And
it does, Julie.
that the government has taken it seriously, and you have to do your training. It's so critical. So this is great news.
Yep, and it shows that the checks and balances are in the system there.
Yeah.
So I mentioned a lot of long-serving councillors choosing not to seek re-election. The longest serving is Glenda Allgood at Ararat, first elected in 1982. Wow. Has retired and has earned that retirement, I would suggest, along with Rob Gersh at Hindmarsh. Then we get to 1987. Robert Vance has been there at Pyrenees since that year. And then into the 90s, 97, Jeff Lovett at Central Goldfields. I know, Jeff, well done to Jeff on your term there, and all the best post-local government. Alex Del Porto at Bayside, Gilbert Wilson at Glenelg, and Peter Hempel at Hobsons Bay, a former mayor, I think 3 times, was first elected in 1999 and has not renominated this time around. And we should mention, I know we did at the time of his passing, Rod Fife, who was 37 years in office and passed away very recently.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's like almost a career, a lifespan that, Glenda Allgood, elected 82. I was in Form 1, year 7, like that's just amazing. Robert Vance, 87, that was year 12. So these are people that have just constantly put their hand up for the local community, and they'll be a big loss in those municipalities. There'll be some fabulous candidates standing and re-elected councillors around them. But what a great, corporate knowledge, municipal knowledge that goes with them. And I'm sure that if it hasn't happened already, many of them will be acknowledged by their councils in the term to come for the contribution they made.
And hopefully Chris and Tony, they'll put their hand up to be mentors for new councillors coming through. I mean, I know that the likes of Alex Del Porto, who I worked with on, for a number of years out at Bayside, and he was a mayor on a number of occasions and was really active in the community, really active as a councillor. It's sad to see people like that have had an amazing contribution towards the local community to step away. So let's hope that they decide to do some good to help, and give some time to maybe mentor some of the new ones coming through. An amazing feat for all of those, and especially Gwenda being Victoria's longest serving female politician. Amazing.
Yep. Nice thought there, Julie. And Tony's helped me put that in perspective. I hadn't thought about it. 1982.
Yeah.
I was working my first job, started at GMV6, which no longer exists, the television station in Shepparton, in my very first job in 1982. So that's 42 years ago.
Wow.
The Duran Duran hairstyle, Chris?
I had hair. Believe it or not, I had hair then.
That's right. When we were all listening to Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet or something, weren't we, at that time, and Madonna?
All right, we'll move on from Hungry Like the Wolf, which is the only song I can think of off the top of my head, to candidate signage. This is a real issue. There's lots of vandalism, defacing, racist messages. Some people actually caught on camera vandalising candidate signs, matters that are in the hands of Victoria Police. Really, in this day and age, can't we grow up and just get beyond this petty, ridiculous, nasty, vindictive behaviour?
I know, it's so poor. It's one of these things where, I particularly was interested in this situation out at Casey, I think it was, where a female candidate has been, her picture has been defaced, telling her to go home, but she's an Australian. But just because she looks like she's not Australian to some of the white Anglo people that live here, that she's been targeted. And she's saying that she's never experienced anything like this before. This is horrific that we're seeing this kind of targeting going on of people that are entitled to run as candidates because, they are Australian citizens and 18 years or over, and are eligible to become councillors. So this just distresses me. It really does, Chris.
Yeah. Look, I think it's a perennial issue. I think it happens, it's happened it was happening 20 years ago. It's still, and it happens at state and federal elections. It's not, unique to local government. There's an element of let's be clever and let's draw moustaches on people. And there's also an element of, people just get emotive sometimes about politics and really want to, are really angry and want to, express that in an inappropriate way with candidate signage. But as you say, Chris, in this day and age, with so many now, closed circuit TV monitoring, etc. One would have to be not only ignorant but pretty stupid, I think, to be involved in this sort of thing.
Yeah. So there's a local businessman in Geelong. The Geelong Advertiser has reported this, who's been caught on camera vandalising a council candidate sign. Apparently 2 signs went missing. They put up a camera and then caught in the act someone trying to burn and then deface, and that's in the hands of police. And I can only imagine that's done some reputational damage to that person and their business. I mean, and for what gain?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So anyway, we've mentioned Casey, Geelong, it's Bendigo, Hume, some stories in the media from those councils in the last few days. And the president of the Victorian branch of ALGWA has been on ABC radio saying this is so distressing for some candidates. She's aware of at least one that's basically given up on their candidates, their campaign, and dropped out of campaigning because it's been so distressing. Gut-wrenching is the term that she used, which is a great shame. And it seems like it's disproportionately impacting female candidates over male. I have no evidence for that, but it does seem like the female candidates are being targeted more.
Yeah,
Certainly
I'm
in
not
the
sure.
media reports.
Certainly, it's an ongoing, been an issue for many years. But yeah, look, I suspect we'll be talking about this in 4 years' time and the next state election, unfortunately. While we're on elections, before we get off them, one thing I just probably want to sing out, and I don't, sometimes I'm critical of the local government inspectorate and LGV, but their election fact sheets that we've been seeing released, every week or couple of weeks throughout in the lead up to the election and through the campaign, I think they've been excellent. There's been a facts around election complaints, campaign donation returns, caretaker period rules, what happens with misleading and deceptive conduct in, advertising, campaigning material, what do you do? Authorization of materials. I think they've been really informative, easy to read. I think they've been really valuable. And congrats to them.
Big tick. More information, the better, hey?
Yep.
For people. One quick election-related thing before we get off it. The Age has run a survey of candidates. Not everyone's participated, of course, but they had a pretty good response. And basically the headline here is about half of candidates are saying councils should focus on roads, rates and rubbish and not on international affairs like, Gaza, Palestine, anti-Semitism, those things. But what that also says to me is close to half are saying councils should be in that space. So I don't think we're any the wiser as a result of that survey. Do you?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily agree. I wouldn't necessarily believe when one says no, should we make statements on issues like Gaza and Australia Day and people say no? I wonder when they're elected, whether they do participate in those things and whether it's seen as, I'm more likely to get elected if I talk about the back to basics, the 3 R's, if you like.
But it was also interesting in that report, Chris, that it talked about what were the top rated issues, and integrity came in as the top rated issue with 34% of people saying that that was most important. Then after that, roads. So, I mean, that's interesting, isn't it, in itself, because always we've known that roads and rubbish have always been up there, but integrity first, roads second, environment and rubbish, and then after that, crime, which is again interesting that crime has not always come up really high in council surveys, etc., but it's come out through this particular survey that 18.91% of those responded to the survey have identified crime as a top-rated issue. So that was interesting.
Well, it's interesting, Julie, in that it also points to still this lack, I think this ongoing lack of understanding of what councils do and what they have the capacity to influence. How is crime the number one issue for councils when it's a law and order issue?
That's right.
They have no power. Virtually all they can do is advocate. They have virtually no power in relation to the criminal justice regime.
And when it comes to roads,
the other thing that councils do is they work in public spaces to try and create spaces that are, not going to be inducive to crime. So there is a placemaking type of role that councils do play to try and avoid crime taking place locally. So there are little bits of that, but not crime per se. But isn't that interesting that it's right up there? And I agree with you, Chris. I think this just explains, what the misunderstanding of the community in what councils are responsible for.
Well, I just think it adds to the confusion because you've got this one group of people saying, stick to your knitting, do your roads, rates and rubbish, and there should be a clear line. You've got other people saying, well, councils should be involved in these spaces, and the lines just keep getting blurred, and no one's the wiser in the long run. I don't know how you fix that, but anyway.
I mean, it is interesting because, councils do get involved in discussions with police around crime prevention. There's no doubt about that. And they work with emergency agencies. There's no doubt about that. But it's not, they don't drive it. Right.
I think we're saying once again that the answer's a pineapple there. Let's move off the election. Just a couple of quick CEO notes. Michael Tudball, congrats to Michael, who's becoming the interim CEO go-to man. He's dropped in at Darebin after the departure of Peter Smith.
Corangamite.
Of course, was the CEO at Southern Grampians for some time. Craig Neiman might be starting his locum career, having left Greater Bendigo not that long back. He's stepped in at Horsham. You might not have caught up with the news that Sunil Bala and the Horsham Council agreed to part ways last month while we were off the air. And a little note that Mark Dupay, a long-term listener of TGU, has been given a 12-month contract extension out at Bor. That'll see him in the role there through May 2026. But we've still got some permanent CEO appointments to be made, which will obviously be first order of business in many respects for some of those incoming councils.
Yeah, and all great appointments as well.
Yeah, they are.
So,
yeah, absolutely. And
we should probably say, Chris, that congrats to Sunil. 6 years at Horsham. A long stint career. Didn't come from the Horsham area, and moved up there. So I'm sure we'll see Sunil somewhere else.
Yes,
one day soon.
And it was pretty rough few months, I think, out there at Horsham for a number of reasons, as we reported. Just across the border in Murray River Council, news this week, Terry Dodds, PSM, who was a guest on the Local Government News Roundup just a few weeks back for a really interesting chat, if you haven't caught up with that. Terry's resigned there, finishes next month, and is going to Livingston Shire Council in Queensland, which, what a lovely gig to get up there.
Yeppoon,
I think. Yes.
The Capricorn Coast.
The Capricorn Coast.
Wow.
Nice part of the world. So well done to...
he was at Moama. Yeah, well, that's pretty good too.
Well, yeah, I guess so. But Moama, Yeppoon, yeah, I'm not sure. I think I might be going to Queensland too. No, not casting any aspersions on Moama. So let's pause, shall we, for a moment, because we need to catch up with Rhys Thomas, who's got some great advice for people about what to do when you get your ballot packs in your mailbox this week or next. Let's go to the Rhys Thomas segment. We'll be back with more panel discussion shortly. And Rhys Thomas is joining us in the VLGA studio. Rhys, great to see you after all these weeks.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here.
And this week, your segment is called Increasingly Formal. I sense that's got something to do with voting in council elections.
It does, because I got my ballot paper today. It's pretty exciting.
Oh, congratulations. I haven't got mine yet. I've been wandering out to the mailbox every day this week to expecting it. Still not there.
Yes, well, I'll be filling that out in great care over the weekend, I think.
So how come you've got yours and I haven't got mine?
Well, it's because they go out randomly.
Right.
So what happens is the VEC sends them out over the course of a number of days. And so they don't send them all on the same day. And there's two reasons for that. One is it's a ballot integrity issue. So if they sent them all out on one day, they'd all be in letterboxes on one day. They'd be overflowing letterboxes in places like consolidated blocks of flats and other things. And it would be much easier for someone to walk down the neighbourhood and pinch all of the ballot papers. So that's one.
Yeah, I guess we've got to be alive to that sort of possibility, don't we?
Well, and you pretend that sort of thing might never happen, but of course it did happen in 2020, if you remember. So
it did in Moreland.
It did,
as it was, yeah,
as it was then. So one of the things that they do is send them out over the course of a number of days. They send them out actually over 4 different days, and that's been happening this week. So that's one reason, is for ballot integrity, and the other reason is an entirely practical reason, which is that the post-delivery workers' motorbike is only so big, and all the logistics of posting mail to every household essentially in Victoria means that it's useful to spread it out over a few days. So anyway, that's what's been happening this week, and the decision about who gets one on which day, who's in the Monday group, the Tuesday group, etc., that's done completely randomly. So as I said, I got my ballot paper today, but there's 2 other voters here in my household, and neither of them have got their ballot paper yet. So they'll presumably get theirs tomorrow.
So at what point, Rhys, do we panic and ring the VEC and say, or whoever we're supposed to call, and say, I haven't got my ballot pack?
Well, Tuesday is the day that the VEC are saying. They're saying if you haven't got it, then give them a call on Tuesday the 15th. So that's next Tuesday. I would probably wait till Wednesday, only because everyone who doesn't have one will be calling them on Tuesday. And there's still plenty of time. You don't have to vote until the 25th. So, yeah, you've got until then. And I should say that if for some reason you can't get a ballot paper, so let's imagine I was heading off on holiday tomorrow and going away for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you can actually go into the election office and vote And you don't have to wait until you've received your ballot paper to do that. Because every individual, not ballot paper, but the envelope you return your ballot in, every individual one is identified, they can actually cancel the vote that they've sent you, even if they've already sent you a ballot paper. So if you go into an election office and there's one for each municipality, you can find out where that is on the VEC website. You can actually go in and vote in person and get it out of the way, take the whole family and get it all done at once, and not have to worry about looking out for the letterbox.
That's good to know. So the act of voting itself, I imagine a lot of people, Rhys, not you, not me, not anyone who listens to this program probably, might be surprised when a ballot pack arrives in their mailbox, not aware that elections are on, and they probably haven't thought about how they're going to vote. So what's your advice?
Yeah, that's probably right. And I'm not obviously not going to tell people who to vote for. That's a matter entirely for the individual voter. But the practicalities of voting, the simplest thing to do is follow the instructions in the ballot pack. You get an envelope, it explains how to vote, and then there's some practical stuff about putting the ballot paper back in the return envelope where you need to sign it and do other things. But when it actually comes to voting on the ballot paper itself, with the exception of the City of Melbourne elections, all you need to do is put a 1 in the box of the candidate you want, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, so on until you've numbered every single box. So if you do that, then your vote will be formal, what's called formal, which means it can be counted. If you do it in a different way, then there's a big risk that the vote can't be counted. City of Melbourne's a bit different. Follow the instructions in the ballot paper. You can vote above or below the line, but it's all pretty clear. But it may be different to what you might be used to in other elections, depending on other circumstances where you might vote. So follow the instructions.
So, Rhys, what does history tell us about the number of people that don't vote properly, that vote informally and their vote doesn't get counted?
Well, first of all, pleasingly, most people who try to vote vote successfully. Most people vote formally, the overwhelming majority. In fact, after the 2020 elections, the VEC pulled out 6 or 7 different elections from 7 different wards or councils across Victoria and analysed their informal votes in quite a bit of detail to figure out whether there's improvements to the system or their communication about how to vote. They found that across those 7 elections, the informal voting rate ranged from as low as 2.8% to up as high as 15% was the highest of those. Now, unsurprisingly, the informal votes fell into 2 categories. And you can essentially tell, did people try to vote informally by accident, or did they mean to vote informally? You can kind of tell. So the most common informal vote, which represents about 1/3 of all the informal votes cast, is someone who gets a number wrong. So they miss a number typically. So they might write 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that might be because they might be drafting it on another bit of paper and transferring it across, or who knows what it is. They might just simply skip a number. They might not speak English, and that might be a challenge for them.
And in some cases, there might be a lot of candidates. They might have simply just lost count.
There is. And look, the Wyndham election, which was one of those 7 they analysed, had 38 names on the ballot. And that was the one where they found a large number, 835 voters, got it wrong because of the numbering. Whereas another couple of elections they did only had 3 candidates. And not surprisingly, most people could manage to count to 3. So that was accurate. So that's the numbering problem. There was another common error, about 1 in 6 of the informal votes, is where somebody doesn't fill in all the boxes. So they might fill in 1, 2, 3, and then they look at the rest and go, oh, these people are all hopeless, I don't want to vote for anyone else, and send it in. Well, those votes don't get counted. So the 1, 2, and 3 become wasted, and the whole vote becomes informal. So that's a mistake you don't want to make. Even if you think the rest of them are all bad, then try and number them in the order of who is the least bad, I think.
Right.
Then the next biggest group, slightly less than 1 in 6, that's blank ballot papers. And that's largely an intentional, you would have to think, an intentional informal vote, someone who just says, I don't think these votes worth my time thinking about, but I'll avoid a fine by stuffing it in an envelope and sending it back. And there's probably nothing much the VEC can do about that. The obligation is to send back your ballot paper, not necessarily to fill in all the boxes. So then there's a few other types of what you'd call deliberate informal votes. Really just a handful, things like people writing words on them, crossing them out, drawing pictures, writing none of the above, or writing in another name of a cartoon character or something they think to vote for. They're all pretty small numbers, and anyone that's thinking of making a powerful political statement by writing a protest message on a ballot paper, well, hardly anyone's looking at those.
Doesn't work, does it?
So no, I think you'd be better off to get yourself on social media if you want to make a statement like that.
But thankfully, from what you're saying, few people do that. It's a pretty low number.
It is. One thing that I did find interesting is the informal votes for one of the elections, which only had 2 candidates. You'd think that would be pretty hard to mess up, particularly as if you leave one box blank, if you number all the boxes except one, the VEC will actually count that vote. That's a saving provision because they can assume what the last one would be. Yes. So the election with only 2 candidates, you'd think you couldn't get that wrong. Quite a few people actually did. When I say quite a few, I mean a handful. But 1 in 6 of the informal votes in the Wangaratta Ward that only had 2 candidates, they were wrong because people put ticks or crosses on them. And that's sort of to be expected when you sort of think, well, what's the point of a preference? If there's only 2 people, it should be obvious. So people just tick. Make sure even if there's only 2 candidates on your ballot paper, you put a 1 and a 2.
That's really interesting because you've pointed out problems where there's 2. You've pointed out problems potentially where there's a lot of candidates, but you said, and I quote, not surprisingly, most people manage to count to 3.
They do.
So 3 is the sweet spot, Rhys.
Maybe 3 is the sweet spot. Thankfully, we've got quite a few elections this time that have 3 or more candidates. We got a relatively small number. We do got there is a number of uncontested or small contested wards, but we did okay, I think, in the overall wash of things.
Okay. Now, once the ballot packs are returned, perhaps just very quickly outline for us, what's the process from there?
Well, they have to be returned, first of all. You've filled out your ballot paper, you've stuffed it in an envelope. Make sure you get to the post office box and actually post it. It's surprising how many people find it magneted to the fridge when they go to stick their apparent fail to vote notice from the VEC later in the year when you get one. They find their vote there. No, you stick it in the post box and get it in there by 6 p.m. on Friday, the 25th of October. That's worth remembering because people talk about election day, which technically is on the 26th of October, the Saturday, but the mail isn't collected on the 26th of October. So it has to be in the post box before the mail is collected, which will happen after 6 p.m. on Friday, the 25th. So get it in before 6 p.m. into the red post box or at the local post office, and it will be counted. They then go,
and it may be important if there's very close votes that are waiting to be determined by those last batches that are coming through.
Every vote counts. It really does, and it even counts particularly in single member wards where allocation of preferences, and remember they are your preferences, not the candidate's preferences that matter. The order can matter quite significantly because some of those counts do go down to just a handful of votes. So once the ballot papers are received, they're counted by the VEC. They won't start that on election day. Don't sit up waiting for Anthony Green on ABC to give you the rolling results. Don't follow people's social media accounts expecting an update. It will happen starting on Monday the 28th. That's when they actually start counting them, and actually continues for a couple of weeks because, of course, mail that's posted on the 25th of October won't be received by the VEC necessarily on the Monday. It might be received throughout that week. In fact, they'll accept a vote that arrives up at any point during that week, provided it was posted on time. And so they will count that data. Now, they haven't made clear, the VEC, yet what data they will make available publicly, whether they'll provide progressive updates, which they have done in previous years. So I expect they might. Or for some of the smaller elections, they may wait till they've got the full result and then publish it.
Yeah.
There will probably be some informal information available, particularly from high-profile counts, because candidates can send their own scrutineers, and in a single-member ward system, they don't count the votes by keying the ballot papers into a computer. They literally just move them from pile to pile. So it's fairly easy for a scrutineer to see which pile is bigger. For those wards where it's a multi-member ward or an unsubdivided municipality, then they key the results into a computer to enable the proportional count. And that's a bit harder to see as a screen.
Okay. Some distinctions there that I wasn't aware of. So that's really good to know. People like you and I will be scrutinising what information there is to try and get a read. But for most people, it'll take some time. And if we take our cue from New South Wales recently, Rhys, the election day was the 14th of September. Most results weren't declared until the first week of October.
Yeah, theirs takes a bit longer because they have grouped candidates and parties and directly elected mayors and a range of other things. They also have referenda during their elections, which is an interesting little twist that one day maybe we might have in Victoria. But for now, it's just a matter of putting them in piles, and the VEC is pretty good at this, and that's absolutely what they'll be focusing on, getting them out. They've guaranteed to the sector that they'll have all the results declared by the 15th of November for all councils, but I know they've told a number of councils that they're expecting them to be done earlier than that, up to a week earlier than that. So we can expect to see results for different councils come out at different times.
Yep.
Except, of course, for Yarrie Ambiac, where we know the result today.
Yes.
Because it's completely uncontested.
Indeed. All right. That's really interesting. I'm sure there'll be some more insights between now and election day. And if I can recommend one thing to people, follow Rhys on LinkedIn for lots of great little tidbits of analysis and insights as this election occurs over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and I should say I've been feeding out a few bits and pieces in recent weeks, but the VLGA is actually doing, it may happen today, or it may have even happened yesterday, I'm not sure. They'll be feeding out some data about a detailed analysis of all the candidates.
Excellent. Look forward to seeing that. Thank you, Rhys. Great to see you, and we'll chat again next week.
No worries. Thanks, Chris.
Another interesting segment there from Rhys, and can't wait to see what else he's got for us between now and election day.
Yes, and Chris, I'm so excited that he's given me all the tips and tricks of what I have to watch out for when I'm receiving my ballot paper. I haven't received mine yet, but obviously we know the reason why now.
Yes, well, as Rhys has just explained, I haven't had mine yet as well. But I did mention this to Rhys, you might have heard. I did like this quote, which I've written down. I'm not sure if it's an episode title, but he did say, not surprisingly, most people manage to count to 3.
Yes.
When we're talking about formality and informality.
He mentioned those spoiled ballot papers, and having been a scrutineer at various elections in various capacities over the years, I've seen some elaborately spoiled ballot papers that would take seemingly a long time to illustrate in that way.
Yeah.
As I said to Rhys, to what end? Hardly anybody sees it. It's it's almost a silent protest, isn't it?
Gives the scrutineers a smile.
Yeah, okay. Don't encourage them, Tony.
No.
Talking about elections.
If you don't vote, what's the fine, guys? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember. What is it?
It's $99.
$99. Okay.
I think it's $99.
So, is that indexed, Julie? Does that go up every year with CPI?
I think it has gone up. I think it has gone up from last time. So, but I think the latest is 99. If somebody can correct me, that'd be great. But I think it's 99. Anyway,
I did notice while I was away, a significant number of people in Queensland have been served with apparent failure to vote notices after the March elections. It obviously takes them some time to build that list. We'll hear something similar, no doubt, from New South Wales, where their elections have concluded. 37 directly elected mayors there. Many more mayoral elections happening as we speak. I've got a running tally on the Local Government News Roundup website. We've had a lot of those results come in this week. Some councils had referendums on reducing councillor numbers, you might have seen. In most cases, that's got the support of voters, with the exception of Wallara, where they wanted to cut from 15 to 9, I think it was, councillors. 50.98% of the votes said no change. So it was pretty tight, but that's sort of going against the grain of council reduction that we've seen in some other councils there. Let's have a look at Queensland. Troy Thompson, the Mayor of Townsville, keeps making news. There's an ongoing Crime and Corruption Commission investigation. You might recall back around the election campaign time, his claims of military service have been called into question. The government, on the last minute, basically the 11th hour before going into caretaker in Queensland, gave Mr. Thompson a show cause notice as to why he shouldn't be suspended for 12 months. He's saying he's not going to take that lying down. We're yet to see what happens next. But all of this is just playing into the hands of those who obviously see this as bad news for Townsville. It's not helping anyone in that city the longer this goes on.
Yeah, well, he's out there saying, Troy Thompson, that it's a political hit job, and talking about, you know, natural justice and those sorts of things. And as you say, making that point about the caretaker period, but certainly, you know, that background of, you know, questionable claims re military service, a vote of no confidence by his fellow councillors was carried in June of this year. There seems to have been ongoing controversy coming out of Townsville for many months now.
It has been, absolutely. And even some more this week with some argy-bargy in the chamber around paid parking. They've apparently decided on a new CEO, but the name of that person is yet to be announced. And the other thing that's happened is the government has put in an advisor, what we would call a monitor, here in Victoria. His name is John Oberhart. He's a veteran local government executive, spent something like 30 years at Logan City Council, including as Chief Operating Officer. So he's been installed there to obviously observe and advise as these issues keep playing out at Townsville. Let's move on to the Sunshine Coast, where the mayor there, Rosanna Natoli, has announced this week that she's been cleared of allegations of election campaign donation breaches. It's illegal in Queensland to take donations from property developers. There was a claim that she'd done so in the lead up to the election where she became the mayor this year. She says the commission has cleared her. The commission is not saying anything. Some people are saying, you know, how do we know that's right? Where's the transparency in this process?
Yeah, I have some sympathy for her situation because, as you say, it is illegal to take political campaign donations or donations from a property developer. In this instance, a doctor, I believe a medical doctor, donated $2,500 to Rosanna Natoli. Now, that doctor happened to also be a regular applicant for DAs, or, you know, as they call them up there, you know, planning applications. So it's been described as a, you know, a blurry political donation law. Conceivably, you know, any of us might donate in our, you know, private citizen position to a to someone in Queensland, a councillor, and in fact, because we're a frequent applicant, even though we're not, we don't make a living out of being a property developer, where we might be, that gift might be captured, or that donation might be captured. So one to watch, but yeah, it does seem to be a fair bit of interpretation involved here.
Let's talk about dogs.
Yes, let's talk about dogs, Chris.
Two stories that caught my eye, team, this week out of, again, the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, because obviously it's animal registration time and they're trying to drum up awareness. The Sunshine Coast has announced a list of the more strange names that have been registered for pets. You've got pets like Susie Cinnamon Toast and Mango Popcorn. Why would you call your dog Mango Popcorn? Sprinkle Joy, Sunflower. I like Sunflower. That's not bad. And things like Zorro, Obi-Wan, and Clark Kent. What do we reckon about those names?
And Albert Einstein as well, which I think is fantastic. But look, this is great. This is great that councils are playing on this for a bit of fun. I mean, because dogs are fun, animals are fun. You know, it's really great that they've done this to sort of bring attention to what is an important time to register your pet. So it's very creative, it's very interesting, it's very fun. I think it's great that they've played on that. I think they said in Sunshine Coast they've got 66,000 cats and dogs registered on the Sunshine Coast. So this is a significant amount of people that have dogs and cats that are registered. So this is big business for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. And going by recent media reports, there's as many snakes around as well, which I'd be worried about if I was living up there.
Yeah.
The Gold Coast has also gotten in on the act. Top 10 dog breeds and popular names. What do you think would be the most popular breed of dog on the Gold Coast, team?
Oh, is it the Labrador, Chris?
It is the Labrador. You've seen the list, haven't you? It is the Labrador, followed by the Maltese Terrier and the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel and the Border Collie. And apparently lots of oodle mixes in there as well.
I was going to say, Chris, because I thought that sort of cavoodles and groodles were really, really growing in numbers. So I'm actually disappointed to see the oodles not in there.
Well, I think they've lumped them in. So there's a comment there about the oodle versions of those. So maybe they've counted Labradoodles under Labradors. I don't know. Because oodles there is a separate listing in the top 10.
But Chris, have they got silly names there as well on the Gold Coast?
Well, just before we get to that, I think Tony had a comment about that.
I was going to say I was interested in the names and the common names. We're a 3-dog family with 3 border collies. Remy, Ruby, and Darcy didn't get a mention in the top one. It's Bella is the top dog's name, and Luna is the top cat's name. But I figure you can have, if Frank Zappa can call his daughter Moon Unit 40 years ago or whatever it was, well, why can't
showing
you
your age, Tony?
Something stupid,
Who's Frank Zappa, Tony?
Yeah, he's showing his age.
Chris will explain it.
Sorry, I'm
DJ,
joking.
He'll know.
Yeah.
But can I say, Tony, Coco comes in there, and I have a Coco.
Oh, there you go.
Who's a cavoodle, and so I was pleased to see Coco there because Coco, Charlie, and Buddy come in there as top names as well, which we're not surprised about, really, are we?
So it's Bella, Charlie, Coco, Buddy, Molly, Luna, Ruby, Daisy, Max, and Teddy. The top 10 dog names.
So
I've got an Olive. There's no Olive there. And I've got a Nacho. There's certainly no Nacho on there. Yes, we like to be different in our household.
Nacho's a good one. I like
it. So there you go. Well done, Sunshine Coast and Gold Coast. And before we wrap up, sticking with the dog theme, a little UK story that I was thinking of you, Julie, when I pop this in. There's a council in England, it's called Walsall Council, that's being slammed for spending £46,000 on corgi statues as a tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth II. Now, come on, surely the corgi's fair game.
Yeah, I know. I'm not surprised that they've had some flack over this, Chris, and the amount that's cost them. I mean, obviously they've got lovely doggy bowls at the bottom, or the picture shows doggy bowls at the bottom of the statues.
They're pretty big, aren't they?
They're pretty big. They could have been a bit more discreet maybe and a bit cheaper. I'm not surprised they've got flack over this one. I think they maybe should have rethought this one. It's a bit elaborate. There's probably a lot of dog lovers in the community, but, bit marginal for me.
Oh, you're a party pooper. But you're basically aligning with the locals who say that they don't see the point of the corgi statues.
Yeah, so, I know they're trying to honour Queen Elizabeth, but
it's art, is it, Tony? Is it art? That excuses everything. It's art.
In a Ballarat, born and bred, but the statues that down the middle of Sturt Street in Ballarat or in Bendigo's, another place, they're pretty iconic now, and they're 100 years or more old.
But they're not corgis. They're not corgi statues.
I'm kind of more interested in a corgi than a picture of Queen Victoria or a statue of Queen Victoria, Frank, or some general from the Boer War. But anyway,
we beg to differ.
at least it's public art that looks like something. You don't look at it and wonder what it is. But anyway, I'm a bit on the fence, and I would like to know what the listeners think. Tell us yay or nay for the corgi statues.
There'll be thousands of people getting their photos taken next to it with their own dog as well. Their real life dog. I bet there'll be a tourist draw card.
Yeah, I suppose there is. Is it Friar Bobby in Edinburgh? The little statue that's in Edinburgh. Have you seen that one? I think it's Friar.
Yes. Yes.
Bobby's Fry or something. Yeah, and that gets, you know, tourists from all around the world, but it's tiny and it's just on a little pillar in Edinburgh. You've got to really search for it, but
And
it's
there's the
a bit more
Akita.
discreet. I
There's
like that one.
And there's the Akita, the dog that sits outside of Shibuya train station in Tokyo. That's very, very popular as a tourist attraction as well.
And I suppose we always had the dog on the tucker box, didn't we? In New
Yes.
South
Yes.
Wales.
That Gunda guy.
Gunda guy, that's right.
Now,
That's
speaking of things we
wonderful.
have in Australia, quick pop quiz. There's been a new addition this week to the big things. You know how we have the big pineapple and the big,
Yeah.
I can't think of anything. What else? The big banana.
Big koala.
The big
out of
koala.
Auckland.
So
Merino,
what's the new
Goulburn.
addition to our list of big things, guys? Do you know? Did you see that story?
No.
Sorry, I haven't got the link for you, but it's over in Carnarvon in Western Australia, and it's the big tractor.
Ooh.
It's a massive tractor that you can actually drive a
Wow.
car under.
I wonder if the council paid for that one.
I think the council, the local shire supported, but no, it was
Okay.
largely built with donations from private sector. Yeah.
Okay.
So look it up. I'm sorry I haven't got the link. I saw that a couple of days ago. So if you want a reason to go to Carnarvon in Western Australia, you can head over there and see the big tractor
Big
now.
tractor.
Okay.
Long
Fantastic.
drive for a tractor. But
See,
anyway.
folks, we haven't lost our touch. We're still full of it here at TGU. And that might be where
we won't answer that.
that might be where we draw the line for this week, Tony and
I
Julie.
think so.
Okay. I think so, says Julie.
Uh,
Thank
Chris,
you very
I'm-
much, LGX CEO. Good to have you on the show, and all the best with the
Thank
new
you.
venture. And
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm just a big shout out. I'm out at East Gippsland today and tomorrow, so it's nice to be out in this beautiful part of the world. So big shout
Excellent.
out to East Gippsland Shire Council.
and I think you might be joining us next week on location. We might hold that as a surprise as to where you're coming
Yes,
from.
it will
Yeah.
be an exciting
Okay.
event next Thursday.
Excellent. And Julie's just given away that we're pre-recording this on Thursday, but never mind. They didn't know. You didn't think it was live anyway, did you? And Tony, what's on the go for you next week?
Oh, I'm out and about again, but again, I'm loving the council election stories, and I've been to a few. It just out of curiosity, actually, a few candidate launches along the way, just to see some, particularly the Melbourne City Council ones, which are quite elaborate.
You tragic you
What's that?
local government tragic you.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no
So
local government tragics, I can tell you.
Yeah,
All
I'm yet to go
devotee.
through all the survey results, though. I must admit, I'm yet to go through. You know, you can, if you're interested, go on the Age site online, and you can go into individual councillors and read how they responded in
Saw
your
that.
own
I passed on that. There's enough to read. I did, and there's various candidate forums happening around the state that are being arranged by, you know, local media and ratepayers groups, etc., which are getting some attention as well. So busy time for the next few weeks, but make sure you vote, folks. And as Rhys told us earlier, make sure you vote correctly so that your vote counts. Okay, thank you, Tony, and the team there at Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. Please pass on our best. Thank you for being sponsors of the show. Thank you, Julie. Thank you to the listeners and viewers. I hope you'll join us again next week for more TGU from VLGA Connect.